All right, we have a really special guest today, Christmas Abbott. You've been around not only the CrossFit community, but the greater health and fitness community for, over what, 10, 15 years now, isn't it? Isn't it strange as we get older to think to ourselves how long we've been doing something?
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Yeah, I've been in the fitness CrossFit community for almost 15 years, and like that's bizarre.
Yeah, when people
That's
say,
wild.
how long have you been doing this? And you're like, wow, like most of my adult life. You were really the first, I would call it crossover star in the CrossFit world.
Oh, thank you. I don't even know what that means.
I'm not sure exactly what it means either. I think it just means you were able to take this idea of, hey, I'm really fit and attractive and a good coach, and what can I do with it? Where can I run with it?
I guess so. I think that I would like to attribute my perceived business success because like I was just a freaking monster on the floor, and people were like, "Look at that tiny little girl," and then I would outlift the girls that were bigger than me. I mean, I get crazy in competition, so with competing, and then my athletic career. I feel like that really put me on the map. And then I ran with that. Like that was like, okay, I know that this is really short-lived because let's face it, like I wasn't born a natural athlete. I didn't even start working out until I was 22. So I was just like, well, this is a gift and I'm just going to run with it. So I just
So,
took it and like went all out.
well, that leads me to two questions. One, what got you to work out at a 22-year-old age? I mean, that's late in your. I wouldn't say that's late. People join CrossFits at 40s and 50s these days, but for someone as fit as you are, what took you so long?
Um, well, I didn't do any high school or collegiate athletics. I was actually like a really wild child. Like I did lots of party, like really, really wild child. And I won't get into details of that because there's plenty of stories out there that explain that. And so I just knew I needed to change my life. I took a job overseas in Iraq as a civilian contractor during Operation Iraqi Freedom, the war. And I went over January 2004. And 3 weeks later, we had incoming come in, and I was like, what the heck am I doing? I was smoking, I was drinking, I was doing all the things. And I just knew that I needed to change my life. I didn't start working out right away. I ended up quitting smoking first, which took a little while, just like baby steps, but huge steps to a better lifestyle. And that like eventually later on that year, I found fitness. And then the very next year, 2005, is when I found CrossFit. So I have been doing it for 15 years. Whoa.
I,
Um,
I don't want to jump too far ahead yet, but you
yeah.
obviously have a huge impact on the female demographic out there, especially now with Loyal, your child, who happened to also get you a little bit under the weather this week. So if she sounds a little bit stuffy, that's a mom
Yeah.
thing, right? You're always dealing with, snotty babies. But
Yeah. He gives me open mouth kisses and then coughs into my mouth. I'm like, there we go. All
but
right.
you love it, right?
I love him. He's so funny.
So, but my question is, do you think the fact that you had to quit something like smoking has made you a better coach for those women who maybe, we sometimes forget how hard it is to be on a diet for people that have never done it.
For sure. So I definitely, this is why I share my stories because I want people to extract the lesson that I learned and not have to go through the same trauma that I went to for that lesson. So if you're able to listen to me and be inspired in a way that you can change your life for the better without having to, go participate fully in wrecking your life, then please, that's what I love. That's why I love sharing my story. And I really think that there's, sorry, I think my Sudafed just kicked in. Um,
I don't want this. You always hear about those interviews where like the celebrity is like drunk on air. I don't want that to to turn into this right now.
yeah,
So,
yeah, we're okay. And I think that what I love sharing is my relatability. And so when I opened my gym and I started hiring coaches, they worked under me directly. But I hired coaches that weren't the best athletes. I hired coaches that loved to coach other people because their ultimate goal was to have the athlete be a better athlete than them. And when they have real life experiences like having to lose weight, like struggling with real life shit and drama and trauma and coping, those are the people that I think that are going to always give it their all, and they're going to get in the grit of things, and you're going to see this grace from them that transition into your athletes and your people and your purpose. And so, yeah, I personally really prefer, and you know, not always, I think naturally talented people can understand the struggle. But when you have that real life experience to be able to amplify and to relate to, then it takes you from a podium to a service position.
So let's dive into that for a second. You've owned CrossFit Invoke, and we can talk about the sell of that in a moment. But when you're hiring somebody, how do you figure that out though? Because, you know, sometimes it might be a member of yours that you get to know, but other times maybe you're looking to just hire a coach because you're so busy now and you can't really ask, hey, what traumas have you been through in life? You know, you're not allowed to ask a lot of these questions at a job interview per se. So
right.
what were some of the ways you can figure that out? So if a box owner is listening right now, they can take from that, okay, these might be questions I want to ask, or these might be things I look for. Because like you said, it's all about caring for these clients, but how do you determine that?
I never hired outside of the community, meaning that you were a member at my facility and I was able to see your dedication, your consistency, your struggle within those walls on a regular basis. And for me, my hiring process was not an all hands, anybody wants to come. I have a very rigid process, much like HQ, where I would actually cherry pick some people and ask them if they were interested in coaching. We had an internship process. They had to do a minimum of certain hours of shadowing, a minimum of certain hours of actually active coaching. They had to do a written test. They had to do a coaching test. And then after all those things were completed, which some of them had to go through that a couple times, then they were promoted to assistant coach. Assistant coach, same thing, testing, hours given, consistency of showing up, consistency of being involved in the community, and then you were promoted to head coach. It took from start to finish about a year and a half for somebody to go through this process to become a head coach. So I have zero churn in my coaches. The only time I lose a coach is when they move out of state. And I'm really proud after, you know, to date, 9 years, actually this is the 10th year that we've been open, that I've had some of them go and open other facilities that have been successful. I mentor them during that process too. It's not a what can you do for me mentality. It's how we can help each other. And I was with them, coaching them. We had coaches breakouts about once a month. During internships, we had it once a week. We had a coaches retreat, much like HQ does, to bring solidarity to the group. You have to be in the process if you want to have your finger on the pulse. And if you think that you're just going to hire somebody through asking them a few questions and that they're going to rock star for you and be a great fit, you are terribly mistaken. You have to garden your garden in order to see the fruits of your labor. I get a little excited about this one.
And I love it. I mean, that's what this is all about. In my recent book, I talked about how when the first person left my gym, my first coach left to open, I did not handle that well, right? I lost my mind a little bit. Did you have any moments like that? Or when your first coach told you they were opening their own box, was it just sunshine and rainbows, or was there a little bit of anger there?
Oh, I got blindsided my first. So I went against what my intuition told me. My intuition told me, open my gym myself. I had done everything, 95% of it myself. And then at the last minute, because of fear, because of insecurity, because of, you know, some of these traumas that I hadn't quite dealt with, because I just didn't completely believe in myself. I partnered up with this person, and within a year, they went and they pulled the DBA. I mean, they did a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and I had a choice in that moment. So like, it was a bad break, you know? But in that moment I had a choice. I could close shop, which was on the table for me to consider. I could pursue them legally and sue them, which I had every right to be able to do. Like, I had consulted a lawyer, and, or third option, which a lot of people don't think about, I could double down on myself, which I should have done before, right? So I'm correcting my mistakes from earlier and going back to my original intuition is give back to my community, be there, mentor my coaches, mentor my athletes, and do the work and focus positive energy into my work. And I don't care what they say. I don't care what they're doing. Just remove yourself. Don't compare. Don't look outside of where you are. And I actually just posted about this. I'm like, look into yourself for your own light. You know, I had the answers. I was the solution. I just had to believe in myself enough to know that I could do that. So for me, it was all about giving into the community, serving something bigger than you that is going to fulfill your purpose.
And that's often easier said than done, right? So in reflection,
it's the hardest of all the choices.
Right. So say someone's going through that, and it's very easy now in retrospect because you've been so successful to be like, well, you know, I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't necessarily have this success had I changed it. But if someone is going through it, what are some of the things you would encourage them to do, and how would you help them change their outlook, you know, from this negative perspective to a positive one?
So I'm really, really big on core values. And for me, one of my core values is integrity. And with that, I wanted to look back and said, whatever this process yields, whatever this situation is going to yield, I don't care what they're saying, because like, people say make crazy things. They make up anything. And like, you want your story to be heard. You want to set the record straight. The universe will give them their lessons. The universe will enforce their lessons. It is not your job. Your job is to hold your integrity and to serve your community. And so through that practice, you'll be able to always take the higher ground. It is not easy. It is the hardest of all of those options, and it sucks in the moment. But I promise you, when you look back, you're going to be like, I'm really proud of myself. It didn't come out the way that I thought it would, or it came out better than I ever expected. That's not for you to determine. That's the universe to give you. That's God's choice, not your plan. And you just gotta like for me, I had to stick to my guns of integrity and not proving that they were wrong and I was right. That's where a lot of people get down that slippery slope, and they just end up getting into the mudslinging contest, which just costs you major money. It costs you your reputation in your community. It costs you so much more than you can see or put a dollar amount on. So I really, really challenge people that like every day, if you start the day with gratitude, like thank you, God, or thank you, whoever you want to say for this day and this opportunity. And I'm going to try my best today. My best may not always be good, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to hold today with integrity. And that means that I'm going to hold myself to a higher level than they are.
I've said that numerous times. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. It's hard in the moment not to want to just like tell everybody this is what's really happening or this is the truth. But if you just sit back and do the right thing, the truth will always prevail.
It does. And maybe not in the way that you wanted it to, and maybe not completely. But here's the thing is that you know your truth. You don't have to speak it. You just have to practice it.
So when you talk about a gratitude practice, what does yours look like?
So I've started this thing. So every morning I wake up and make my bed. And so I'm like, yay, I've already accomplished something. I'm really big into structure and schedule and accountability. And for my gratitude, I've been doing this thing daily where I write down something, not just like I'm grateful for, like I'm grateful for, not being sick today. I specifically write down something that happened during the day that really brought me a moment of joy, or that I'm grateful for. Even like the hard stuff. Like I've had some like lessons that were really, really challenging and were not fun. And I really didn't like them, but I'm grateful for them because they gave me the lesson that I needed at the time. So I write down specifically what happened. And, it's just one moment, like one little line. And so now I can look back, and it really kind of helps me remember the year as it goes. But then like these tiny little moments create so much more positive thinking. And when you reflect on the good stuff, it's hard to get in the funk about the bad.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're doing something specific. And you mentioned something like, hey, not being sick, but it's often something we do take for granted if we don't have a gratitude practice. Like you're like, oh shit, I'm sick today. Now I'm upset. But you weren't grateful for the other 364 days that you weren't sick.
Oh, yeah. But I really
So
challenge people to get like really detailed with it. And like a real big moment, like a moment.
let's take a slight turn here.
Okay.
Tell me about Christmas Abbott's journey onto the CrossFit seminar staff.
Oh man, I'll tell you, that was hands down an unrealistic dream come true. And, like I said, I wasn't an athlete in high school or college. And so like I was grossly out of shape. I hadn't ran a mile since in my middle school, and it wasn't even intentional, like it wasn't even at an effort until I was 22. And so, people look at me now and they think that I was an athlete all my life, and it's just not true at all. So
Were you just like one of those skinnier, leaner girls that just thought they were healthy because you weren't overweight?
yeah, but I also like smoked and drank all the time too. Like there was no question of, I had a very bad lifestyle.
So you were skinny, so you weren't like, okay, I need to change my diet, but you also were highly unhealthy, doing a lot of bad habits.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was
So
me.
yeah, quite the term. But again, I think that's what allows you to be such a good role model and coach, because you've been there. It's like the trainers that gain weight on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
now you've been there, done that with a baby, so you can, really understand that as well. But sorry, go back to your seminar journey.
Um, so, once I discovered CrossFit, I was like immediately mesmerized. I fell in love with it upon first look, right? And like then I went to my seminar. Coach Greg Glassman was coaching. Nicole was there. Dave was there. Like it was all like, Andy Hindle is, all of the legends. I was getting coached by Coach himself.
Just like 2006, 2007?
2007, yeah, is when I got my certification and a certificate, excuse me. And
Oh, look at you. That's a sign of a
yeah,
seminar staff
it's
member
not a
right there.
certification, and it's a certificate. and I just was in awe. And I remember going home and I was like, man, it would be amazing to be one of those coaches, because I was coaching CrossFit at the time, but I didn't ever think of myself as a coach until later. And he was like, you'll never do that. And I was like, well, okay. A couple of years later, I'm in a different place. We're obviously not together anymore. And my friend, I'd been coaching CrossFit, regularly for a long time now. And my friend was like, Christmas, you should try out for the level 1 staff. And I was like, I laughed in her face. I was like, yeah, right. And she's like, I heard they're like not hiring, but I heard that like, they're bringing on interns. And she like really pushed me. And I was like, well, maybe. And then I applied, and I couldn't believe it. They said yes. I was like, they were like, okay, we'll let you be in as an intern. And it's like the one-time trial. And I was like, what? It blew my mind. And here's the lesson here is try it. Like, I didn't know if I had the credentials. I had never been a coach before. I had never been an athlete before. And here I am. They're saying, yeah, we're going to give you an opportunity to show us what you know. And I studied. I like prepared. I took that as more seriously than I took anything else other than like, coaching. because it was my one shot. And I remember I had the best time of my life. I remember exactly how I felt beforehand. I remember the conversations that I had with Chuck that day. I remember one of the participants asked this absurd question, and I looked at Chuck and I was like, was this really happening? And I remember—
Do you remember this question? What was the question?
Oh, it was a very bad question. I remember the question. I won't repeat it because it was just like very degrading to Greg Glassman. And
Gotcha.
I was like, what? And I remember Chuck's very diplomatic response. He kept his cool, but he put her in her place. And I was like, this is amazing. And everything about that whole experience, I could literally write a whole chapter in a book about my 2 days there. And the follow-up, like it was really something special. And I'm always so grateful for them taking a chance on me.
So you were, for those listening, you intern, you're typically under a flow master, who in this scenario was Chuck. Do you remember Chuck Carr? Everybody listening to this knows him by Chuck, but yeah. Chuck Carr as well. Do you remember the feedback he gave you at the end of the, so for those listening as well, it's like the weekend ends, and whether you're an intern or a staff member, we get a ton of feedback, but especially when you're an intern, and it's like, you're just sitting there waiting for the second half of the day to pass. 'Cause you're like, I've done my job. Like, I still need to be present and socialize with these people, but you've kind of done the big roles. You've taught a little bit, you've shown what you got. What was his feedback to you that day?
So this was the first internship. And so I wasn't even supposed to participate in any way whatsoever. And he threw me in the circle. He was like, all right, teach this. And I was like, all right. I love it because they're like, throw you in the fire, see how you're going to respond under pressure. And, I had to know all of the things that you're supposed to know. And his feedback was that I had great energy. I had great connection with the participants, that I needed to get them moving faster and more reps, and tighten up that teaching timeline of points of performance and execution. And I was like, all right. And then he was like, you're going to be exhausted tomorrow. I hope you have a day off. And I didn't. I had to work 6 a.m. the next morning.
I don't understand how any coaches go from a seminar to the morning class the next day, because there's plenty of people that do it, and I need like a day not talking to anybody. Like, I need to tell my wife, and she's happy with it if I don't talk to her for the day, but it's like, I can't talk. So let me put you on the spot. Christmas Abbott, all these years later, what's the medicine ball clean progression?
Oh man. All right. So deadlift shrug, slow, right? Deadlift shrug fast, front squat, full medicine ball clean.
Close enough. We'll give it to you. You skipped the shrug pull under. You skipped the shrug pull under. I think your presence and attitude, will carry you through this internship, through the second internship, and you'll still make staff. So did you go from that seminar to being on staff, or did you have to do a couple more internships?
They told me that there was going to be a minimum of 3 to 5 internships. And after my third one, I got a red shirt. I remember.
How excited were you about, for so many of us that have made it onto staff, that there's probably been about 300 in the world at this point, right? And that's one of our defining moments. So you've out of everybody, had some amazing things happen in your career, and had a child now, but been on television, best-selling books. Where does making it on staff rank in your accomplishments?
So I remember we had just gotten right over 100. So I was like 100 or 110 or 105. And you could have told me that I just got accepted to Harvard. It was the first this is so powerful. It makes me emotional.
It's the student fed. It's the student fed. Yeah.
No, truly, like, it was the first thing that I ever applied myself to, applied for, and was really accepted because of the work that I had done. And this is why I love the seminar staff so much, is because they do not let just anybody in. You have to not only know your shit, have certain charisma, be willing to, be in a service position. You're serving something bigger than yourself, like a bigger purpose. And it's like this beautiful magic that each of the people that on staff have. Like, they are all rock stars in their own being. And I have so much respect for each and every one of them. And when I got that call or email, really, and I was like, what? I read it again. I ran around the house. I flipped out. I mean, it was the first, like, here's this girl that was just like a really big fuck up all of her life. And then I got accepted to something that meant a lot to me. That was all like at the core of my being. It was pretty legit.
Definitely legit. You were on staff for must be about 6 or 7 years.
A couple of years. I think around, I don't know, a couple of years.
So you probably worked somewhere around 50 to 100 seminars in those years. Do you have a favorite moment that stands out from your time on staff?
Man, I can almost remember every seminar. Isn't that bizarre?
That is very bizarre. Yeah. And I think we kind of remember bits and pieces and the boxes we've been to and maybe the trainer dinner. But
yeah.
Anything, whether it was a Saturday night out with the crew or just a moment where you spent time with a participant, anything stand out?
I mean, I loved the participants. I love the Saturday night social. It makes me, and I just, again, this, me being an educator and love education is one of my core values. Seeing the people go, aha, like understanding it is really, really cool. So this is probably not the best thing to highlight, but I was working at a seminar in Miami Beach, and Sarah Wilkeson got rhabdo from the heat. Like, a lot of things contributed to it. And just sitting with her in the ER that night was pretty intense. But it was like, that's our family. And what I love about the seminar staff, and no matter who you work with, it's a connection. It's a family. And when one person goes down, they all go down. And so now we call her Sarah Willie Wilkeson Rhabdo. And but that was like, oh my gosh, that was like a decade ago. But I just love I love the connection that everybody has.
Yeah, and it's funny.
Yeah, there's just like tiny little moments that like really wouldn't make sense if I was just like, yeah, this moment. And it's like, oh, well, that is not exciting at all.
But it makes sense to someone that's been there, and those stories really transcend time, because I've heard that story about Sarah, and so it's funny how those stories that we all kind of pass along live in infamy, if you will. So you retire from seminar staff, and that's really where, I mean, the Christmas habit that everybody knows takes off. I think the first thing you did was appear with the NASCAR crew, in the pit, if you will, changing tires.
Yeah, that was literally
featured on Inside Sports and HBO, and then going on to Big Brother, right? As someone that doesn't watch a whole lot of television and a whole lot of reality TV, how accurate is Big Brother when it comes to like, hey, what you're seeing on TV is actually what happened in the house?
I mean, obviously it's not scripted at all, because we don't, let me give you a little background on Big Brother. There's no connection to the outside world. And when I say no connection, there's no TV, there's no phone, there's no radio, there's no books, there's no internet, there's no computers, nothing. Like, you are in a room by yourself. Like, they're
making you a little crazy is what's going on.
For sure. And then like when you go into the diary room, is the room that you talk to the camera. There's a camera there. There's not a person there. There's a voice that they talk to, but there's just a camera there. So you really kind of lose your mind. I don't really know. I refuse to watch my season so far. It was just, I lived it. I don't need to see what production did with it. But there's, if production asks you certain questions, and when somebody asks you a question, you start thinking a certain way. So it's not scripted, but it's definitely kind of, I don't know, man. There's
crazy. There's a push there to get you to look. So what was if you had to pick one thing, this crazy experience, you're on television, Do you have one moment that you were like, okay, I can look back on this and be happy about?
Uh, I can tell you one moment that I would have changed my mind on. I would have not gotten that piggyback ride.
All right, so
And
no
broke my
piggyback,
foot. Yeah.
no piggyback rides. Now, after this, you come out and you write an amazing book, Helping Women Transform with the Badass Body Diet. What inspired you to put together a book about nutrition?
um, since since the beginning at 22, and I wanted to do something better for myself, I started researching food and different diets and using myself as a guinea pig. And so, I found the zone diet, I found the paleo diet, I found eliminate, like all of them. I tried all of them. And I just made a log of which one made me feel physically well, which one made me feel emotionally well, and which ones didn't. And so I found that like when I ate really, really clean, just so basically I did what CrossFit did with workouts or exercises. I cherry picked what worked for me really well and left what didn't. And so and I did that for myself. And then years later, specifically during NASCAR, in my competing days, people kept emailing me, "What is your diet? What do you do? What's your nutrition?" And I was like, "Well, don't people know?" And I'm just assuming that because I'm so late to the fitness game, that everybody knew this stuff, and I was like just giving them information. They're like, "Well, why'd you just say that? Because I already know it, silly." And I realized that they didn't. So I started to put together a seminar, and then that spawned the book. And the book was amazingly a national bestseller.
I mean, isn't it crazy to go from this teenager who's living this, pretty chaotic life to a best-selling author? I mean, at 22 years old, before finding CrossFit, where did you think your life was going versus where it's actually gone?
I knew a lot of the reason that I changed my life is because I knew that I was going to end up making a decision that killed me. I saw a look at my future and I didn't like it. It scared me. And so I didn't know what needed to be changed or how it needed to be done. And so I just started making different decisions. And that's how I found fitness. That's how I found CrossFit. And through that decision process of always wanting something better for myself, I was able to really make this incredible, very dynamic life. And I don't even want to say career because it's my life. Like I love it. And no, I look back and had I been 22, knowing where I was going to be now, there's no way that I could have wrapped my head around it. And I definitely wouldn't have believed you, but I'm just so grateful for that shift and that decision to be disciplined instead of just wild,
Well, and as you've settled down, you now have Loyal,
Yeah.
your baby boy. How has that impacted your life? I mean, like you just said, I think for a lot of people listening, their careers are who they are. I mean, you and your job and your career is all the same when it comes to who Christmas Abbott is. How has having a baby changed all that for you?
It hasn't changed my purpose. I believe that my purpose is still the same, is to, through my experiences, help people extract the lessons so they can see their light and their potential and live their best selves and like really create who they want to be. And so like I'm the conduit, but one of my favorite tools is fitness and nutrition and health and wellness, right? Those are just tools that I'm using to help speak to people so that others, I love to educate and elevate. Those are two of my core values. And that's my purpose. I'm living my purpose through my core values. And I want to, with being able to now have a little human that looks at me and examines every single thing that I do, who I am, how I interact with him, how I interact with the world, nothing changes in that. And that makes me really proud that I've been on my purpose. And because of that, it didn't change. Now my process has changed, where before I was traveling 3 out of 4 weeks of the month, I was working 12 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, people think that this was an overnight sensation, and I'm like, this is 15 years in the making. So I really love doing what I'm doing, but I'm just smarter. I say no to a lot more stuff. I say yes to only what allows me that time with my son and my family, and I have a much healthier life work balance.
I think one thing that I really appreciate about you is you've not shied away at all from showing off your new mom body.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, you still look amazing, and anyone that would look at your pictures still thinks, Christmas Abbott looks beautiful. But what challenge has that been for you, and for other women that a man like me maybe couldn't understand?
For sure. I mean, listen, I still stand on, we get one body out of this life, one body. And I want to preserve mine as well as possible and not beat it up as, like beat it up in my workouts, right? But like in a positive way. And my body made a human.
That's pretty incredible, right? That's like, when you stop and think, that itself is amazing.
It's incredible. And I think that it's so easily overlooked because it's pretty common, right? But I grew a human inside of me. They pulled that 9-pound baby out, and then I'm supposed to expect that my body's going to be like it was before that happened. Like, I have to have a serious check with myself. And I love my physique before because my body did what I asked it to do. The physique was a byproduct of my work. My work was me pushing and like training because I'm an athlete. And so now, why wouldn't I respect my body even more because it did something even more extraordinary? And so like, yeah, there's some days where I'm like, woo, man. But I'm like, and I look at that little guy and I'm like, worth it. And so now it's just, I have to love my body the way that it is, and I have to take care of it. And it's just different. It's just different. And when I first got pregnant, I was like, you know what? I know that this is going to be way out of my control. So I'm going to go ahead and relinquish that mindset now. I'm going to allow my body to be what it needs to be to do this job, because right now my job is carrying this child. And then that's it. You get a little wear and tear when you do something like that, and that is okay. And honestly, if you're going to mom shame me or like not think that I have like some guy was like, they put a comment, they're like, I wish more women would do what you did post baby. And I was like, you are missing the point, dude. Like, shame on you. Every mother's recovery is different, because with the day that my child was born, I was born as a mother. And that is a very, very, like, you have to respect that process. And not everybody has the same recovery. I had a really traumatic pregnancy. I gained 60 pounds. I had a failed delivery, C-section. I mean, it was bad. So I have to like give myself a little love and forgiveness, and like let it be as it is. And so like, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do this the healthy way to get, I would always say, I don't want to bounce back. I want to build forward with my body as a mom.
Having been a CrossFit competitor, is birthing a baby, from being a man, something I'll never do. Is that the hardest workout you can ever do?
You know what? Oh man. I mean, yes. I have to say that like between training for the games, training for nationals in weightlifting, NASCAR, the mental tenacity that all of those take and the physical demand that all of those take could not prepare me for having a child. And when I say that, I mean, like, I was in labor for 13 hours before we decided to do a cesarean. The cesarean, like, I was like convulsing, and I looked over at the guy beside me and I was like, do you mind tying my arms down? And the guy looked at me like, what? I was like, I need to be restrained because it hurts more. Just like I'm in such pain. Like, And then they wanted to knock me out. And I was like, I don't want to be asleep for this. Like, I want to be as present as possible. And they're like, this bitch is crazy. So I just, it wasn't like physically it was painful, but it was just like the mentality of pulling a human out of your body. That's, I don't know, it's crazy. That's wild. I still can't even believe it happened.
So all of your training though, do you think that helped you overcome? I mean, we just recently watched, my wife and I, there's like a documentary on Netflix about, Sex Explained. And part of it is all about giving birth and how women will sometimes have drugs and some women don't want it. But do you feel like your training, obviously you go to a C-section, you have to have some sort of drugs, they're cutting you open. But prior to that, did your training help you get through a lot of that?
Yeah, so my training, like definitely, like I was good. I was golden. I was ready to do it all. And then, uh, like I stayed in the game, and I'll tell you, so like it gives you a little bit of details. So it was in labor for, at that time, 13 hours. And I was only, I had been at 7 centimeters for 5 hours, meaning that like I had stopped like trying to give birth. And the fact that you have to get to 10, right, before you can deliver. And then
This
you go
is
through
news to
pushing.
me. This is news to me. So yes, okay, to get to 10.
Yeah. So you have to open up to 10, and then you actually start pushing. And pushing can be 2 hours to 24 hours. Like it's crazy. And we were already at 13 hours, and I wasn't even like close. And it was like a mental shutdown. I just started crying. I was like, what in the world? But like the doctor was like, this is abnormal. Like your body's not, like your body's rejecting him coming through your birth canal. I'm like, okay. And she's like, it's okay to have a cesarean. So we had a cesarean, and I'm really fortunate that we made that decision, because he would have gotten stuck. She was like, there's no way that this kid was going to fit. He would have gotten stuck, and we would have had to do an emergency cesarean anyway. So it's like, I don't know. It was so much at the time that I don't even remember how painful it was. Post delivery for my cesarean was more painful than I remember the actual delivery.
Well,
So like for a month, I couldn't even sit up by myself.
I mean, they cut your abs open basically, right? They cut through your abdominal wall.
Yeah, and they cut it different ways, and so like you're basically like getting sliced from hip to hip, and then like, okay, cool, go home and take care of a baby. What?
I myself was a C-section, and then I watched that documentary, and I had no idea what my mom had been through. And I'm like, holy shit, Mom, thank you for doing that. Like letting, a doctor cut you open and go through all of it. It's amazing what you moms do, is what I'm trying to say. It's just, the more you get to know it, it's just like, wow, this is truly incredible what women go through to have human beings come out of their body.
I agree. Like it still like makes me in awe. Like what I'm really in awe of, like women who do natural childbirth, even regular vaginal childbirth. I'm like, I kind of got a freebie here, in a weird way. I just find it fascinating and terrifying.
So I want to let you go. I know you've got a ton to do, but before I let you go, I want you to tell me a little bit about your new app that you have coming out.
So I'm really excited about this. It's more, it's obviously like really diverse, fun workouts, a nutrition plan based on, that is sustainable. It's not a diet, it's a nutrition plan that you can apply for the rest of your life. It's the way I've been eating for the last almost 15 years. And then also, mindset. I've talked a lot about goals, not goals, I'm sorry. I talked a lot about core values and understanding the difference between core values and priorities, and structuring your day, structuring your schedule, just things to keep you, not only to get you on track, but to help keep you on track and keep you accountable. And I'm really, really excited about it. You can find it at christmasabbott.com, or just head to my Instagram at christmasabbott. Pretty easy to cyber stalk.
Yeah, you can find, people always ask, how do I find you? It's like, just Google, you'll find Christmas everywhere. You've mentioned core values a handful of times, though, and you've mentioned yours being educate, elevate, integrity. Is that something people will be able to do within the app, or do you have a place that you recommend? Because just telling someone, hey, find your core values, where would they begin?
Yeah, so that's actually a process that we go through in the app. When we start one of the programs during the onboarding session, is like we go through your core values, and I tell you how to, because people are like, oh man, I explain how to like get down to 10 and then get down to 6 and then maybe your top 4 or 5. And what's cool is that these are the things that you want to be integrating into your day every day. And these are the things that help you find and stay on your purpose. And these are the things that really define who you are and what kind of legacy you're going to leave. And like, if you're making decisions, they should be made through your core values. And so I walk you through that process.
I don't want to go back too far, but I forgot to ask you one question.
Yeah.
What did you crave when you were pregnant? Like, what food, being that you're so into nutrition, what was, you always hear these stories of ice cream and pickles, but what did Christmas Abbott crave during pregnancy?
Oh, lasagna and lemonade. Oh man, I would order 2 plates of lasagna. Like, I would go out to eat. I gained 60 pounds. Now remember, on a 120 frame, 60 pounds is
That's 50% of your body weight. You're double.
legitimate. Yeah. And so I would order 2 plates, and like, I just could not help myself. I was not in control. Like, I was like, feed me. And I had a friend doctor look at me and goes, Christmas, you only need 300 extra calories a day during your pregnancy. And I would have decapitated him if I could have. I would
like, don't tell me what to do, doctor.
Listen, guys, never say, oh, any day now, because I was 6 months pregnant. And people were like, oh, you're having twins, but you almost do. And I'm like, get out of my face. I was huge. But I would eat I would order 2 meals, and I loved lemonade and lasagna or pastas. And they'd be like, oh, do you want one for to go later? And I was like, no, I want both of them now. And I'm not saying that what I chose was the best. I ate pretty well, like, honestly, most of the time. But then I would have, like, every other day or every day or something like that, a little pasta and lemonade. I really couldn't help myself. And I was honestly like, I'm not easy. Like, I don't like it when women use the excuse of like, oh, I can eat whatever I want now. I'm like, this is when you need to be the most nutrient conscious, is right now. But you also need to allow yourself to have those cravings. Just don't let the cravings turn into like a cripple of you being lazy and passive about your decisions.
No different to your everyday life, right? Enjoy life, have some lemonade and lasagna once in a while, but make sure 90% of the time you're eating well.
Yeah. And I did, but I just, like, I retained weight, I retained water, I blew up, like, whew.
Well, you've bounced back. You look amazing. You're changing the world still. Before letting you get off this call, one real lesson that I try to preach to all of our listeners and anyone I come in contact with is really, you have to do what you're passionate about. You have to do what drives you. And I think sometimes the mistake people make is looking at someone like you and being like, oh, Christmas, she's just attractive and she made it overnight. And it's been, 15 plus years in the making. So if you would, can you, for 30 seconds, tell the listeners out there how they can go about changing their lives? Because they look up to people like you and other games athletes and authors and, celebrities out there on the internet and think they can't do it, but you've been able to do it.
Yeah.
What is something they can do, whether it's start right now, or what advice would you give to them if they're looking to make a real deal, permanent change, 180 in their lives?
I love this. And this is exactly what my app is about. But one, sit down, know what your core values are, know what you stand for in life, know what you want to leave your legacy to be. And that should be wrapped up into the same, right? Love the process. I got to do these extraordinary things because I loved the process so much that it actually just kept building more opportunities. And I didn't see something and then reverse engineer the goal. I did what I loved. And through that process, these things came and I said yes to them because the things that I said yes to were in line with my core values. So you see how all of this is connected. And honestly, I love There's this book that I read recently that was like, give 1% more each day. And so don't just do enough. Go a little bit beyond, or go a lot beyond. But if you do just a little bit more each day, make your bed each day, stick to your schedule a little bit more each day, then you will find yourself in an exceptional place.
Well, thank you so much. You have certainly found yourself in an exceptional place. It's been amazing to watch your growth, primarily via Instagram at Christmas Abbott, but to see all that you have accomplished for someone like me, where it's just like, doing something very similar to you, and it's possible. It truly is possible. And you've lived that life, and I hope people check you out, whether for the first time or for the 100th time. Download the app. You said it'll be out, towards the end of February, but go check that out. Check out our books, and just check out everything about Christmas Abbott. We appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you coming on Best Hour of Their Day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.